I'm Eric from Birmingham.
And I'm Jerry from Boston, Massachusetts. It's another Sunday podcast. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Kind of excited that we've gotten 2020 behind us. Things can only get better, right?
I wouldn't be too quick to say that.
Well, we still got some work to do, of course. But things are looking good. The days are getting a little bit longer. The weather will be getting warmer up here anyway. Hopefully. And then it'll be summer or spring, then summer. We have with us a guest today, as you know. Debbie Catalano is going to be joining us in just a few moments. She is had a company in Boston called Catalano Creative, and she and I have known each other for many years. I'm excited she's agreed to join us here today. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So Debbie is the proprietor of Catalano Creative. Started a public relations firm. She expanded in 2008 to include some copywriting, editing, proofreading, as well as publicity. Debbie established herself in the music industry as a publicist for bands, musicians, and music events. In addition, she was director of publicity for a major independent record label, Critique Records, representing the label and its various artists. She's still working in the music industry today as a publicist for various events, including the Boston Rock Opera, where she began as a publicist in 2000 with the production of Jesus Christ Superstar, featuring Grammy-nominated band Extreme's frontman, Gary Cherone, who played Judas. She continued as a publicist for the Boston Rock Opera shows, included were David Bowie tribute Stardust to Black Star, The Lives of David Bowie, Hair, The Hereafter Party, and The Happening Holiday Special. In addition to these many activities, she also books and promotes music for small venues in the Boston area, also for a local Chamber of Commerce summer concert series, and most recently started working with the production company Sound City Events, where she's responsible for booking and promoting acoustic acts for socially distant outdoor shows at the Waterfront Hotel here in Salem, Massachusetts. Deb was also an owner and managing editor for New England Performer magazine, the writer and editor for the Boston Music Awards program. She was a managing editor of Soundcheck magazine and a reviewer, contributing writer to the local rock zine, The Noise. Please welcome Debbie Catalano. Debbie, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
So happy to have you join us as our first podcast of 2021 and our first guest. Quite a resume. You are one busy person.
Yeah, I guess so. Sometimes.
That's good nowadays to be busy.
Yes. Yep. That's true. That's true. I don't think I know how not to be in a sense. I'm restless, I guess, if I'm not.
I certainly understand that, and I've known you for a number of years, and I've never known you to slow down. So I don't know where you get the energy, Red Bull or something like that, but it's good to see you again and to talk to you. So we talked about when we talked about bringing you on this show that we wanted to talk about the music scene, Boston music scenes, and then. And now, and the music scene in general, and maybe some other entertainment thing that you may be involved in.
Yep.
You can also talk about your company as well, and get some folks out there that might be interested in your services. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing now? Anything special that you're working on that we may have not already told the listeners?
Well, as far as in the music industry, you mean?
Sure, whatever you'd like.
Well, yeah, you did pretty much cover everything. Although anything I've done in the past, 9 months, I actually didn't know if I would be able to do anything in the music world after the whole thing with COVID, but probably I tried. Let's just say, other than everything that you mentioned at the beginning, without boring your listeners with what I do, I can say that some things surprisingly did work out in the music world. The Stoneham Chamber of Commerce, there's a summer concert series that we mentioned that I've been doing that for, oh gosh, 15 or so years. It's an outdoor concert series that we give to the community, and I just assumed, oh, we're not going to be doing it this year. But the director of the chamber figured out a way to do a drive-in concert. So we did it at the local zoo. We used the parking lot, and it was just wonderful because we were able to bring music to people safely, and we paid the bands. I wouldn't have done it if we couldn't pay them, because the musicians and anybody in entertainment, it's been really tough for them. And I had been trying to think, since this all happened, what can I do to help them personally? And I hadn't really, we didn't know how long this was going to go. A lot of them have been doing the streaming shows, and I've been trying to promote that, like on Facebook, and doing little Facebook boosts. It's really the only way that people will see things. And I don't even know if that helped them, but they were just trying to get out there. And then when this came along, and I was doubtful at first, and we were able to do it. We did this where we had people drive in, and they sat where they could get out of their cars and sit by their cars. So that was exciting. That started, usually our concert series goes from June to August, and this started end of July, and we went into early September. And that kind of kept me going because, just to get, like I said, just to bring music to people and pay the musicians, it was all like a win-win-win. Like, I was happy to be busy with that. Musicians were happy to be out there performing, and the people were happy to see music. So that was cool. And then the other thing was what you mentioned too. There's a local production company, Sound City Events. Now, they were part of the Stoneham concert series because they're a chamber member, and they built this stage. We had to have like a little stage just that we had to dismantle, or they dismantled after every show. So, and they ran the sound. Sound was beautiful, incredible. And I started working with them separately from the chamber in booking acoustic acts at the Salem Waterfront Hotel in the patio outdoors. Again, paid the musicians, brought music to people. We did that as long as we could be outside. So those are the two recent things that I've done, at least in the past year, just to try to somehow, have music going safely. Really, really important, of course, keep everybody safe. And I'm hoping to be working with Sound City on other things. We're hoping to still do the summer shows next summer and other things that they may have. And same with the chamber. I don't know if we'll have to do drive-in again, but if we do, it was a huge success as far as it worked out smoothly. And I think we actually brought more people. In a way, people who hadn't come before came to these. So we'll see how that goes. So that's pretty much, and there's other musicians. I try to help them with different things they have going on. I have a singer who's trying to protect her name legally. So there's another, it's quite a story, but very similar to the story you may have heard from Lady Antebellum, who had to change their name to Lady A, and there's already a singer named Lady A, and she's fighting for her name. Well, there's a singer I've been working with. Her name is Brianna Cash, and there's another singer with that name. So trying to give her some publicity as she gets her story out, as she fights for her name, and which is really important when you're an independent musician. So I think a lot of what I do is really just to, as I did from the beginning when I met you and we were doing, working with bands, it's just really out for helping the independent musician. So whatever I can do to do that, I'm going to keep doing.
So you are basically a jack of all trades. So you're booking them, you're working with them, you're almost representing them as an attorney. This is great. This is great.
Well, I don't know about the attorney part, but I guess I just try to help them.
It took a few months, but you were able to find a way to do old things and bring bands back before audiences, which a lot of them, and Eric's a musician, and he can talk to you about his band, and not having to get out there and play before an audience because of, the whole COVID pandemic. So
right.
I think this is the way the world is now. We have to find different ways to do the old things that we did, and what you did is perfect. And I'm sure that the bands were extremely happy with it. It sounds like it was a huge success from what I've read on some of the shows that you did. They were huge successes. I've driven by a couple of times. I couldn't even get in the parking lot.
Oh, wow. You should have texted me.
I should have got that +1.
I would have got you in, of course.
So, pandemic aside, you and I met back when the music scene in Boston had just exploded. I think there were probably 2 areas of the country that had exploding music scenes. 1, and maybe 3. Seattle was certainly one with the grunge. We had the New England or the Northeast rock, New England rock, and then we had, of course, maybe L.A. was had some music out there as well. But I remember Seattle grunge and Boston. And then, of course, it was the Jersey Shore, the Springsteens, and the Bon Jovis, and those guys. But when we met, there was a countless number of clubs, because I remember going to all of them. And little, small, everything from small dives to, mid-size venues. And bands were just flying out of Boston, making it big, like The Extreme that you work with, and bands like Boston, or The Cars, for example. What do you see the changes between then and now, again, pre-pandemic? Do you know why, or what changed? What might have happened?
Well, there are a few things. I think when you list all those major bands that, were bred in Boston or New England and came out, the time area that you're speaking of, we had MTV, we had a local music television station, V66, which
right.
I know Eric won't know about that, but that was sort of like Boston's version of MTV. That's actually how I first learned about a lot of these local bands, not only the major ones, but there were a lot of local bands. Before I was of age to go to clubs, I would watch V66. And so people had that visual. They were able to really get their names out, so get a following or get radio play. So as far as the bigger acts go, or as they grew, and then there was like the venues and the fall, just people just packing it in to clubs, which they don't really do anymore. They really, first of all, aren't the venues that they had. But as far as your question, why was that? I think a lot of that had to do probably at that time with the visual, with having MTV, with having people exposed to acts they never had been before. Boston with V66 with MTV. And I think, if we're talking about, the 80s, if that's the era that you're talking about, when you mention all these
right.
band names, the Cars and all that, I think a lot of them just became that because of that.
And you and I were involved with several local bands, and we played some of the smaller clubs in basically the pay-to-play kind of thing, or play for free, because there was just so many bands out there. It was very difficult to get. It was difficult to get weekend gigs. I mean, you could certainly get a headlining show at a decent nightclub on a Wednesday night when nobody was going out. I remember we actually did one on a Wednesday night, our first headlining gig, and it was on the night the World Series was on. So and of course, that crowd was what small crowd there was. Their eyes were not focused on the band; it was obviously focused on the TV. Now, and it just could be that I'm not in that business anymore, but it doesn't appear that the clubs are there anymore. A lot of them have closed their doors, and the number of bands has seemed to decrease quite a bit. And I've always been curious as to what could have happened, and maybe it was just there was no outlet for them. What do you think the internet, YouTube, for example, plays a part in these bands? There are artists that are popping up and being superstars, being discovered on platforms like YouTube. Right.
Well, I think it could go 2 ways. It could be that people have more of a way to get to people, not even just in their local towns. They don't need a club if people are tuning into YouTube, and so they can give themselves a wider exposure. But then you sometimes wonder, is it oversaturated? Is everybody going to sit in front of their screens all the time? I guess they kind of are with their phones. But when you're local and you have the clubs and you have the people that would go, then you've got your core audience there. When you're wider on there, you do reach more people. But then you have to compete with everybody else trying to do the same thing. So I think it could go either way.
So do you think it's more saturated now with the number of?
I think there's a saturation. I mean, I always want to learn about new music from wherever it may be. Sometimes I get it still on the radio, and sometimes, but do I personally sit and go through YouTube to discover? Probably not. I probably have to have somebody lead me to it, somebody sharing it. So I think it's really social media is what really has led people to those spots. So if somebody shares on their Facebook, or hey, check out this singer, and I'll check it out, and then I'll go to YouTube, and then I'll listen to it, and then it might be somebody new. So I think you need just like another step to get it there. But it also depends on age. Maybe a lot of younger people aren't doing it that way. They're just sort of hanging around on YouTube or wherever, TikTok and what have you, and they're discovering music that way.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I know, like down here in Birmingham, I recently flipped through a book I found in the university library about the music scene in Birmingham back in the 70s and 80s. And it seemed like it was so much more band driven, like a band with a drummer and a bass guitar and lead singer. And when you go around now, you still have bands, but there's so much more work to be made, or work. You get more work if you're more like a duo or a trio that you can set up in a restaurant somewhere and, be wallpaper music for the people that are there. And I see that more. And I see less bands that are trying to make it, and more like singer-songwriter types and little jazz trios and stuff like that. And I wonder why that is coming. Or do you see that up there in Boston? And if so, like why is that happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do see that in Boston, definitely. And it could be a few things. One could be the lack of venues where, there are places that had like a big stage that would offer a band an opportunity. They still are here. I mean, let's just talk pre-pandemic. I mean, one of my favorite places just had to shut its doors because of the pandemic, but it was called Once. And they had that stage, and they always were pushing local artists to do that. But the stuff that, like Jerry mentioned at the beginning, that I booked were, you're right, acoustic acts. It seems like smaller places that are around or coffee houses or restaurants are giving these musicians opportunities, or musicians are going to go wherever they can go and make the money. And if they have to, cut down their act or whatever, I mean, I shouldn't say cut down their act, but downsize, what have you, just so they can get gigs. So I think that's what it is. I don't think it's that people don't want to be in bands anymore. I think it's just that the places to go to be heard is what I think. They're still around, bands, but when you mention it that way, I think there are, festivals, that's where we are. You're limited with weather. So I do see bands doing the outdoor shows, full bands. But yeah, no, it's a good point.
And I think Eric too can attest to having played some smaller gig, not with the full band that you're a part of, but going out and doing like wineries or restaurants or something. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we've done a little bit of both. So Phil will sometimes get a solo gig, and he'll just ask me to come along with a djembe or something like that. But we've done bigger outdoor gigs, and we've done one festival, but we've done a couple wineries, and with the full band outside, and that has gone pretty well. So.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about, the festivals and the outdoor opportunities. Fortunately, those are still happening, and they were still able to happen, so that does at least give bands the chance. But, I was thinking when we were talking about when years ago, when all those bands that Jerry mentioned, we were doing it, people would flock to these shows, and we didn't have social media. They didn't have, maybe they would find out and listen to a local radio show, or maybe if they saw a poster, but it almost doesn't make sense that there's more ways to get to people now with social media, but less people going out to the venues. And I'm really not sure where that disconnect is. Why?
Well, I wonder if some of it is from social media, because like you can, well, especially now with the pandemic, you can watch it from your home, or if you want to. And another thing that I find too is that a lot of artists nowadays, at least around Birmingham, do a lot of cover music. Mm-hmm. And so, I find talking to people, it's like, well, why would I go listen to somebody play something that I can get the original from, on the internet and listen to it at my home or something like that. And so I wonder if that has things to do with it as well. I don't know. I'm just.
No, I think so too. Have you noticed down in Birmingham, is it the same thing? Are venues closing? Are there less opportunities for bands to play in a venue? Has that changed down there?
Well, I haven't really paid attention to it because, well, our band has been kind of on a hiatus because we're trying to get an album out right now, and but life's getting in the way with jobs and everything, so, and the pandemic as well. But I noticed that a lot of places, I volunteer and do drum lessons at the Shelby County Arts Council in Columbiana, and one of the ways that they have started doing their shows is they'll limit the seating, so it'll be like 60 seats max out of a 200 capacity building, and then they'll also live stream the show, and have like a virtual tip jar kind of thing too. So that's one way that they've kind of gotten around it, by streaming it, but then having a limited seating capacity as well.
Right.
But I don't know as far as like in Birmingham, the city of Birmingham, because there's several venues over there, but I don't know how they're doing it, and I haven't really been keeping up. So.
Yeah. I was just curious, just compared to here, if it's like that in other states.
And he makes a good point on the internet and some of the Facebook Live shows that are out there. I've seen, he talks about the Arts Council down there in Shelby County, and they do shows, and they stream them on Facebook and on YouTube. And Crowdcast, our last guest on last week's episode, Taylor Bloom, was doing crowdcasting, and some of the folks that were part of his band are doing their own live shows via crowdcasting or Facebook or whatever. And in some cases, looking for donations or tips or something like that to kind of help them, at least during the pandemic. And I wonder, and I guess we won't know for a while, if it'll ever go back to, will people go back to nightclubs to watch bands in the bars, or are we going to end up all digital, all sitting behind our computer watching these events? Me personally would rather be in a live event. It sounds better, it looks better, but I wonder what the future holds.
I wonder too. It really, I know I saw over the summer when I saw that people were coming out to these live shows, that the summer concert series, that they were just, there was just this joy. They were just like, it wasn't like they thought, oh, well, I don't really feel like going out. I've been inside all along. Of course it could be that it was summer and people already wanted to go out. I think that people will still go, but I think that they maybe will be wary of like really tight spaces where everybody's sort of all jammed up. But I think that they will want to go. So maybe same type of thing. Maybe people will eventually ease back in. They'll be a little wary, a little worried, but they won't stop entirely. But I think it's going to take a little time.
Do you think that a lot of more shows will be streamed or streamed in addition to having a live audience with it?
Yes, definitely. I definitely think so. I think they're going to want to bring their music to as many people as possible. And if that means some people aren't comfortable going out, they're not going to deprive them the opportunity. So I think they definitely will offer streaming. Yes. I
know I'm ready to leave the house, having been working from home and basically cooped up here for, a number of months. And which would in a couple of months will be a year. And I think you're right. I think people are going to be dying to go out and go someplace, even if it's a restaurant, but especially where Boston is a large college town, or any city for that matter, to go out. And I wonder how many opportunities, how many venues there will be after this pandemic is over, and how many were affected by that. So that'd be interesting to see what happens there, and hopefully we can get back to normal. And I think on a national, I don't think things have changed much. I don't think things change nationally any different than Boston. I think we're all kind of, and like Eric mentioned, Birmingham, I think we're all kind of in the same boat here, especially during the pandemic, but even prior to that, I think things just changed because of technology and platforms like YouTube, and MTV isn't what it was when I was there for the first night when they went on the air. We had a big MTV party actually at a friend's house, and trivia for those listening and you folks here. Does anyone remember what the first video was?
Yep. Video Kill the Radio Star.
That's right, Buggles. That's right.
Yeah.
And so we had a big party, but so it's certainly not like that. It's not like that today, but interesting to see how things have evolved over the last, say, 30, 35 years. And so let's talk a little bit about Catalano Creative and what's going on with your business. And if folks would like to avail themselves of your services, whether it's music or non-music, how can they do that? Tell us a little bit about your business.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Well, Catalano Creative, like you mentioned in your intro, I originally began my business as Catalano Public Relations. Then I was just doing publicity, and for not just bands and musicians, but for events, for small businesses unrelated to entertainment. And then the reason I got into PR is just because I love to write, love working with the written word, and I wanted to do more of that. So I expanded it and changed the name to Catalano Creative so I could do the copywriting, proofreading, editing, along with the publicity. So working for both freelancing and on my own as my own business name. So working, I've worked for ad agencies. I worked for the Gillette company, doing both writing and ads and whatnot, and editing, proofreading, and the Boston Globe. Just a whole list of different companies. I've either done it internally or smaller people, individuals, writing their website copy, still writing press releases, all that type of thing. And I love it. I really enjoyed it. I've been doing a lot in the fashion, apparel industries. So, and again, I really enjoy doing that as well. I love to do more of that. So that's in a nutshell, without, being going on too much. That's what I do. And as far as if anybody would like any of those services, another thing I should add too that I've been doing is I've been editing a lot of people's novels and books. I do that a lot. I'm just working on one right now for a friend. Yeah, so that's just another aspect of what I do is doing these all different types of books from the beginning to when they finally either self-publish or try to get it out there to a publisher. So as far as if anybody is interested in any of those services, copywriting, editing, proofreading, or even publicity, it seems like the more the PR work I'm doing is for musicians or events or entertainment. But if they do, they can either find me on Facebook under Catalano Creative. I have a page there. I am actually in the process of doing a portfolio, having my portfolio online, so can't share that link yet because it's not up. But hopefully I will soon. But if they follow me in Catalano Creative or contact me there, I can provide that. Also LinkedIn, I'm there under just Debbie Catalano, and or you can email me at debcat29@gmail.com. Feel free to write me there, and I'm happy to tell you more about what I do or help you in any way. So probably any of those three ways.
And we'll put all of these links and the email address in the description of this episode, so folks that didn't have to, if you're driving and listening to this and you say, oh, what was that email address or something, just go back to the description of the podcast episode and we'll have all that in there for you. So in your bio, it said you work for Critique Records, a division, I believe, of BMG, and you told a story one time about working with a performer on the label that was also a famous actor. Tell us about that.
Oh, yes. They had different acts, different styles of music on the label, including one of my favorites was Digital Underground. They're a hip-hop group, early hip-hop group known for the Humpty Dance, and so I really loved working with them. And another well-known act is the actor you're speaking of, who is David Hasselhoff, who is known in the television world for Knight Rider and Baywatch, among other things, but also a singer. In fact, he was really big in Germany, and it was kind of a joke, but it was actually really true, and probably still is big over there. But the Critique Records picked him up as an artist and signed him. And so, so I worked with him promoting his tour. He did a mall tour. He would go to malls and perform there and concerts and whatnot. And we did a lot of autograph sessions, things like that. So yes, so I worked with David Hasselhoff. Great guy, very, very nice guy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I just can't picture the lifeguard or the tough guy behind the talking car there actually singing. It just doesn't strike me. Did he have any hits?
He did have hits that I can't think of right now. I know that the hit on the album that Critique put out was a remake of a song called Fallen in Love, kind of a soft rock type of, pop tune, of the day that it was known. We did a video and everything. And so you wouldn't think that, but he really loved being a musician. That was, I think, more of his first love, is singing and all that. He was very enthused about it. So that's what made it fun to work with him. And actually, I have kind of a funny story, just something that I've always remembered. It sticks out of my mind from back then, is this mall tour I was telling you about. He would go to various malls and go down to the mall area and in the general area and perform, and people would be waiting, and they would have things like Knight Rider things that they would want him to sign and stuff like that. But he was there to perform. So I was back up in the what I guess if there was a backstage of a mall would be the mall offices, like upstairs, one of the malls, where he would get ready and prepare for his show. And one of these malls, we were up there, and we had to wait until it was his time. And to get down to where he was to perform, we had to go down through a series of hallways and stairs, and it was really crazy. And it was really reminiscent of the movie This is Spinal Tap. I'm assuming you've seen that movie, This is Spinal Tap?
Oh, sure. Rob Reiner movie, yes.
Yes, yeah, one of my favorites. Anybody who's in music or loves music has to have seen it. So I was behind him, and he was going down these stairs, and with his guitar and all that, and we were just following the mall people to get to where we were going. And at one point, he just stopped and turned back and looked at us all and said, "I feel like I'm in Spinal Tap." And it was just, it was hilarious because there was so much that was really Spinal Tap-ish about it. And so, it was like he had a sense of humor about himself, but also the situation, because it was really crazy. And it was just, if any of your listeners out there have seen the movie, then you'll know exactly the scene I'm talking about. And that was just sort of a fun and surreal moment at that time.
Deb, time flies when you're having fun, and this has been an absolute joy to have you on. We have got to have you back. There's so many other things to talk about, but we're out of time for this episode. And but when you come back, hopefully we'll be out of this pandemic. We can talk about the music scene, and maybe we can tell some stories about some of the fun events that we had when we were traveling with the band, and maybe tell everybody about the school bus, or we have a few stories that we can share with our listeners. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. Again, folks, we're going to put all of the links to Deb's ways you can reach Deb, her website and LinkedIn and email address. So if you're out there, and whether it's music, or you're writing a novel, or you just want somebody to write something really nice, will you do Christmas cards, or will you do holiday, get well cards and stuff? She'll write anything you want. She's a very, very talented writer, and her work is, as you just heard, is renowned. So thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I would love to come back. And thank you for having me on your show.
Anytime. We'll have you back real soon. Deb Catalano, everybody. Eric, another episode had gone by. I didn't mention, I don't think, at the beginning, this is our 5th episode. Can you believe we've actually done 5 of these? I didn't think we'd make it past the first one. The listeners are out there. We're getting the downloads and the views and the comments. Thank you to everyone who is listening and commenting. We appreciate it. To remind everybody real quick that if you have an interesting story or know somebody that has an interesting story, please let us know. Reach out to Eric, reach out to myself. We have an email address out there. It's anothersundaypodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to reach out to you, and you could be on this podcast, because the podcast really isn't about Eric and I just rapping all day. We really want it to be about you. with that said, Eric, I give you the last word.
Roll with the changes.
It's Another Sunday Podcast is directed and produced by Eric and Jerry. Music is composed and performed by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom's YouTube channel at Tom Blaze. It's Another Sunday Podcast. Thanks for listening.